Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics and Random. Egberto Will is your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. Welcome to everybody. How are my peeps doing? Let me get to the right screens here. Okay, welcome, Bruce Pollard. Good day, y'all, is what Bruce says out of Kingwood, Texas. Hey, Bruce, I got your stuff. I got to get some a segment of time to arrange so I can bring you the coffee and your stuff. Anyway, Patrick, how you doing? Magner is the first one in the house from Houston, Texas. Bruce Pollard, the second one in the house from Kingwood, Texas. We have Jane, Nurse Judy, California. Are you with the union, Nurse Judy? I worked with or I interviewed a couple of folks with the union. I can't remember what's the name of the union. When I was at Netroots, I think it was in Phoenix, if I recall correctly. Oh no! I think that may have been San Jose. San Jose. Anyway, Gene Daigle is in the house. Denise Medina, how you doing? Marie McQueen says hello. I'm here from Anchorage, Alaska. Love listening to you wherever I can. I love that you are in the furthest west. Well, not the furthest west, but west here in the house. And of course, we have Nuestra Britannia, our beautiful Brittany from Pennsylvania. I call her the Joycey girl. The Joycey girl. Then we've got Eric in the house. Elwin from Birmingham. Welcome to Politics Done Right. Anyway, we got a lot to talk about today. I got 3 interviews and a piece that Jack caused me to do this morning. I went to hit Atlantic City. You go, girl. I got a piece that Jack, my morning engineer. To me, at least in the mornings I got an engineer. In the afternoons, I've all that I got, man. I'm all that I've got in the afternoon. That's what makes it so much more difficult to do the work in the afternoon. Because other than putting the show together, putting all the bells and whistles together, ay, 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 ay. Toma mucho tiempo. Tú sabes cómo va la vaina. All right. Anyhow, as more people come on, folks, get with the program. I kind of realized something. 3 o'clock sometimes can be a busy time. I don't know for people who work, all that good stuff. Let me give you guys a joke. Welcome aboard, Joe from Los Angeles, California. When I got the gig, the daily gig at KPFT, it was sort of some commotions that we had to go through. It was a difficult period to get that 5 day a week thing at KPFT. And I knew it was going to be hard. And this show that I did at 3 o'clock, what I did is I did a poll and I asked folks to vote on whether to go ahead and you know hi. I think I saluted you, but let me salute you again. Thank you for being here and love listening from Anchorage, Alaska. Marie McQueen, thank you for being here. Stuart Cohen, welcome aboard. So I did a poll. Hey, want to move everything to the morning show? And you guys voted it down. It's like, hell no. We are used to doing it at 3 o'clock. That's what it's going to be. So that's how we got into doing 2 shows. I used to do just one show, guys. One shows would suffice. But no, you guys said you're not going to inconvenience you because KPFT could only fit you at 6 o'clock. So I had to do this one as well. But, at some time, you guys are going to have to tell me if a better time in the afternoon. I can't change the 6 o'clock time at KPFT, but you guys are going to have to tell me at some point if you would prefer a different time. We may have to vote on that in the next few months, right before the election. But the reason I brought that up is I've been getting some feelers, as far as moving the time, etc., etc., etc. We'll see. But again, nothing happens without that time doesn't move without a vote or something like that. Okay, because again, it's your show. I got a kudos today from one of our listeners, Dr. Lulov. I did a program. I do the show with Marlon Weems, and we did one today with Dr. Lulov. And Dr. Lulov gave you guys a lot of kudos. He really likes the interaction that we have with the listener. I call you my not the listeners. I call you my complicits. All of you are my complicits. That's what it is. You guys are my complicits. Anyway, I want to play two interviews that I did this morning, and I'm playing it again because, again, I know there are a lot of you that don't do the morning show, but it's these are two important interviews. The first one from Stephanie Thomas, who is the Secretary of State of Connecticut, and she told me to hold my horses. She says, yes, people are feeling bad and people are pissed and all of that, but don't think because people are pissed mean that they're going out to vote. And as the Secretary of State of Connecticut, she has the data that she brought out. And what it really means is that we have a lot of work to do. We can't sit on our laurels. And the other interview is with Helen Gym. Helen Gym was supposed to be the mayor of Philadelphia. She almost won. I remember when she was running, and I'm following those numbers, and I couldn't have been more disappointed. But it's what happens when you get money in politics unabashedly. And she's going to talk about that experience in a bit more. And I will play our piece on what I did this morning on capitalism and versus free enterprise. They're not compatible at all. So let's go ahead and start with Mademoiselle Stephanie, and then we'll take it on the other side. Let's go. Welcome to another edition of Politics and Right. I'm Egberto Willies. I'm honored once again at another net route to meet the Secretary of the State of Connecticut,
Yes.
Stephanie Thomas. Let me tell you, first of all, it's a pleasure to speak to you once again.
Yeah.
I can't tell you guys how impressed I was with this young lady the last time we spoke. And again, I think, are you running for Secretary of the State of
I am. It's a 4-year term, so it is up this year. So I am currently on the ballot in November.
Well, I am absolutely sure with all that you've done, it will be another landslide for your win.
I hope so. I hope so.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. Anyway, so go ahead.
I was going to say, you always have to run scared.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
you're right about
Yeah,
that. And
yeah.
I think that's what happened to a lot of people. And in fact, in speaking to you yesterday, you actually put a scare into me.
Yes, I did. I didn't mean to, though.
Because, we know how bad things are right now. And you told me, don't count your horses. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I run into this all the time. I work with a lot of advocacy groups, but I also travel the state talking to voters all the time. And I think there's this expectation that if people are having hard times or they're angry, they're frustrated, that it translates at the ballot box. But just because people are angry does not mean they will turn out to vote. Do you want me to tell you more?
I want you to keep telling me.
Well, so...
let me tell you why.
Yeah.
Because I think people don't only need to hear that as a talking point.
Yeah.
They need to hear why.
I'll tell you a couple stories. Well, we can think about our own lives, right? Something makes you really mad. One of two things happens typically. You're like, ugh! Like you clench your fists, and like that's the equivalent of people, keyboard warriors, right? They're on social media, they're like striking back, like, no, like they're angry and they're out there. But like doing something on your keyboard isn't necessarily going to the ballot box. Or if you're angry, sometimes it causes you to retract. Like you're like, I'm washing my hands of this. I'm done. I'm never dealing with this again. And these are the same types of emotions I hear when I could be talking to political science majors when it's young people. I could be talking to older people and I say, are you registered to vote? Yes. Do you plan to vote in this year's election? They shrug.
Mhm.
And I'm like, why not? And you hear all of these things. They're angry, but they're tired of all of politics, or they're frustrated, but they don't think their one vote makes a difference. And we hear all of these reasons. And interestingly enough, I went to a panel. This is why I love Netroots. There was a panel today, research based, about a big survey that was done and about people like the disengaged, disaffected group of people, which is quite large. And what they said was, disillusionment isn't disengagement. And what they meant by that was these people do things. They go to protests. They sign petitions. They talk to friends and families. They follow the news sometimes, but they don't vote. And I have a story about that from Connecticut, one of our towns. When the first No Kings protest happened, people had to sign up through Mobilize. So they ran all of those names through the voter file to see how many of them were who showed up to the protest were voting. Less than 40% were voting, but they still showed up to the protest. So a lot of people don't translate the ballot box as the way to make change. So we who believe in voting and making sure that people follow through on that civic duty have to remember that and make sure we're explaining all the time of why that change has to happen at the ballot box.
It is disappointing that, and that's another dynamic I then don't understand, because somebody who signs up with the blue, to go to a protest or whatever, that means that that person is engaged.
Yeah.
And to think that only 40% of them then went to vote, they made the effort to protest, which could actually take more time than voting.
Yes.
That's disheartening.
Before I was elected Secretary of the State, like many people, I thought turnout was greatly impacted, or lack of turnout, by apathy. But since I've been secretary, I realized that's not usually the reason. A lot of people care about their communities, but either they are confused sometimes, like they don't know what's on the ballot, how that translates to the issue they care about most. Like, it doesn't feel immediate.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're just disillusioned because they had voted in the past, but didn't see change happen. So then they're like, why would I do it again? Sometimes they're lacking information about, like, what is this election? When's it happening? What's early voting? What's absentee voting? And there's a myriad of other reasons why people don't show up, but they're not monolithic. So we who care about voter turnout have to meet people where they are in their spaces and try to make them feel part of whatever type of community or action like they're craving, so that they will then translate that same passion that drives them to a protest to the ballot box.
That is why I think you won. Because no, I'm serious. I think you won because you acknowledge human behavior.
Yes.
And not only human behavior. So it's not only that you have a cause, it's not only that you know why you want to be secretary of the state of Connecticut, but it is also that you understand how it works. And I think that is why, again, you're likely to win.
I hope so.
Again, so what would you like to tell the audience, or what should I ask you that I have not asked you?
What I'll tell the audience, I appreciate what you just said. What I try to do is, I wasn't always in politics, right? I got here quite accidentally. So I try to always think about things through the lens of what I would have thought when I was an ordinary person, right? Before I was elected.
Let me interrupt you a second. You said when you were an ordinary person. You are the Secretary of the State, and I watch you around here at Netroots. You are you behave as an ordinary
I
person with the power that you have.
I have always been exactly the same, and I see no reason to change now because of a title, right? But that's very foundational to how I do the job. I try to remember, like, people just like me is who I'm talking about and who I'm trying to reach. So what I would tell everyone out there is that elected people need to hear from you. If you like something resonates, like, oh, I don't bother to vote, and this is why, like, tell your elected person so they can try to change the system or come up with programs or tools or resources that you would find helpful. I think what we've lost is this two-way communication. I have to learn from the people, and the people can learn some things from government, but like, we need both sides always working on it.
You are always impressive. Stephanie Thomas,
Thank you. Always a
Secretary
pleasure.
of the State of Connecticut.
Yes.
Thank you so kindly.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. I want to tackle something real quick that Eric wrote out here because I think it's important and I am so proud of the Netherlands. Let's go. Here's the breaking news that he puts out there. It says the following. This is very important. It says the Netherlands Parliament has approved a 36% tax on unrealized capital gains effective from 2028. Under the new measure, investors will be taxed on the increase in value of assets such as stocks, bonds, and cryptocurrencies, even if no assets have been sold and no cash has been realized. Despite a petition signed by 61,000 citizens opposing the proposal, Parliament proceeded with its approval. If taxpayers lack sufficient liquid funds to cover the tax liability, or if asset values subsequently decline after payment, the government assumes no responsibility of these changes or these challenges. The policy represents more than conventional taxation. It effectively treats paper gains as taxable income before any actual realization has occurred. Many of the Netherlands' most skilled investors are already considering relocation. Get the hell out then. Capital naturally flows to jurisdictions that offer more favorable treatment. 2028 is approaching, plan accordingly. Here's the funny thing about that, right? We need to do that here. Every country should do that. Let me inform folks of something very important. Eric would make it seems like, oh, that's a bad thing because that's unrealized income. Let me give an example. If I buy 1,000 shares of Apple at $100, that's that's 1,000 shares at $100. That's $100,000. Okay. Now, if that stock goes to $200, I now have $200,000 in unrealized gains, meaning that paper has increased by double, right? I could sell that and capture the gains, or I can forever keep that in that stock, right? And people say, well, if I go ahead, if somebody then tells me, what is your net worth? My net worth is $200,000. Well, my assuming that I have no other debt, my net worth is $200,000. And how did you get from $100,000 network to $200,000 network? Well, my asset grew. It's calculated within my asset. Let's back up. So, you may say, well, but it's not fair because you haven't realized it. Yeah, you're saying to treat your income differently than we treat other people's income. Let's go a little bit further. I get a house. My house is worth, let's say, a couple $100,000. But next year, my house is worth $250,000. That's an investment, just like a stock is an investment. Whenever my house goes up to $250,000, guess what? I pay a certain percentage of my home, the asset value of my home in taxes every single year. If it goes up in price, my taxes are based on the price it goes up. If it goes down in price, my taxes are based on the amount of the house. So most people have homes, right? But most people don't have stocks. We have been given preferential treatment to investments over over wages. We have been given preferential treatment to investments over investments that all of us have. You get a car. A car is something of depreciating value. Every year, you pay property taxes based on not the value of the car, but based on the original value of the car. Nobody, you don't see the capitalists complaining about that. I mean, we have to be very, very honest about it. Let's go a bit further. You know what rich people do? They keep all their money into stocks. They convince companies not to pay dividends because dividends are taxable income, right? And it's taxed at your current taxable level, right? That is how uh, dividends are taxed. But capital gains, long-term capital gains, realized are taxed at a much lesser value. Okay, so again, why then should we give that rich person that benefit and the poor person or middle class person doesn't get that benefit? But it even gets worse because what generally happens is because rich people convince companies not to pay a large dividend, but instead buy back stocks. Buying back stocks allow that stock price to appreciate, which means the person gets even more money from the capital appreciation of that stock. What does that mean? They get a lot of value, and then guess what the rich people do? They don't, when they need money, they don't sell the stock. They go ahead and take out a loan on the value of the stock. And what is used as collateral? The bank uses the current value of the stock as collateral to the loan that they give you. Well, if that isn't real income, how can the bank use that as collateral? It is real money. So the reality is the investor class have been paying less taxes forever. It's unfair. Let me tell you what would be fair. If the investor class, which is where most of America's money is, in other words, we are peanuts. We have peanuts in assets. Out of all our assets, it doesn't come close to what the investor class has. And that big investor class is 1%, 2%, and 10%. And take a look at how much they have. It's a lot. It's more money than the rest of the country. They get preferential treatment. You don't. Why don't you? Why don't you? And why are we defending these people that are causing our taxes to be higher? Because if we tax those wealthy people appropriately, there are three things that will happen. Well, I should say four things. We could get Social Security solvent because we could fund it differently. We could get Medicare and Medicaid solvent because we would fund it differently. We could also ensure that all our taxes, property taxes, income taxes, everything drops for all of us because the people that are parasites, that are not paying their fair share in taxes, that are not worth what they're worth, all of that value goes down, right? Because again, they are stealing, ripping us off blindly. They are ripping us off blindly. And anybody that is worth less than $10 million supporting this, you're supporting something that harms us all. Harms us all. So I don't know why you put that inside of that Mr. Eric Hayes. I think I am absolutely for making sure they pay the taxes on the appreciation that they make. And if that value of their stock drops, when the value of my home falls, or if the value of my homes fall, uh, I don't get back my taxes. When anything that's based on the value of anything that I have, about that I've already paid taxes, I do not get back anything from what I've paid before. So why should we give preferential treatment to rich people? Again, we have to get away from our mental slavery. We have to get away from mental slavery. Again, we must always look out for each other. And we must simply disregard those who are nothing but the mats, the wet mats, the dirty mats for those people who are there carrying water for rich people, even as they don't have a pot to piss in. So let's be very, very clear. Just like your home, just like your car, you pay a tax on it every year. Anybody owning any type of assets should be responsible for being a good citizen and paying their taxes on all of their assets. And if that is done, all of our taxes would be lower. We would all have more disposable income. And for the lower classes, they will be able to save and accumulate wealth because it won't be relegated to a systemic failure of government that has allowed these people to make money. All right, let's go to Helen Gym, a good friend of mine who ran for mayor of Philadelphia. Welcome to another edition of Politics in Right. I'm Egberto Willis, your host. Today I'm with somebody special. I met Helen Gym well back in Phoenix at the Netroots Nation. And you know what I think? First of all, welcome to Politics Done Right. Helen, how you doing?
I could not be happier than to be with you, Alberto, today
Well, let me tell you.
in my city.
Yes, in your city. And folks, I expected her to be the mayor of Philly. We did get that lucky, but I really knew the city was yours. But anyhow, I really knew I was following those numbers. I followed the numbers and I thought it was yours. But anyhow, Helen, what are you doing right now?
Well, first
After
of all,
running for mayor.
yeah, no, it's been great to step out of the spotlight. For a lot of people who are in government, in office, especially if you're trying to push hard to make change, it's a lot, to have just all the focus be on every word you say, how you say it, where you are, who you're with. So it's nice to kind of step back a bit
Right.
and remind us that politics are not good when they're based on kind of the celebritization of politicians and elected officials, no matter how great they may be. And instead spend my time supporting communities, really like trying to think about what worked. Why were we able to get homegrown an eviction prevention program that ended up being replicated in 180 cities, part of the Biden Bill of Rights, and cut our evictions in half. Like what was it that made that happen? And so thanks to a fellowship from Open Society Foundations as a democracy fellow, helped work with different communities around the country, put some stuff in writing, got a chance to be with a fantastic cohort of people who are fighting authoritarianism from all these different methods and ways. And now I'm just thrilled to welcome Netroots back to Philadelphia.
And we're here. So did you take this fellowship sort of to say, how can I, it's interesting because you fulfill, not being a mayor, a lot of policies that most mayors would dream to have fulfilled. Not being the mayor, and one would assume that enough people would have seen your success in pushing these policies that were successful and elected you as opposed to someone else. That said, did you pretty much go to this conference to learn that it's not enough to be good at what you did, what you accomplished, but there's also some games that you have to learn to play?
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously a profoundly important time in our country and everybody's lives. But I think I am here to, well, one, it's great to be here to like listen and learn, but also I think I want to make the case that what I always knew, that politics don't start with politicians, they start with us. That even the best people are hampered from within if communities are not empowered, powerful, funded, and supported to take action and change. That political circumstances inhibit the best people, but communities go beyond what's politically, possible in any given moment and make the case what must be politically necessary. And so, to me, as we, like look at a time when, I said this in my remarks this morning, but, I want people to know that, what happens in, South Colleton County, I think in South Carolina, Colleton County with the Black residents there shutting down an AI data center matters more than a freaking Senate speech where, you got a senator saying everything that they can't do on this issue. It matters more to have, Larry Krasner be elected as a third term as district attorney than it does to watch, Todd Blanche as Attorney General effectively legislating. It's not even just that it's closer. It's that, how do you stop authoritarianism in DC if we can't stop it at home? And actually the things that stop authoritarianism is not power. Power doesn't power butts up against power, but it's the I think Zoran said it really well. Zoran Mamdani, Mayor Mamdani, said it really well by dismantling the tools that made authoritarians that gave authoritarians their power anyway. And that happens at home.
Right.
It is painful for me to watch as a city of Philadelphia sits on an unimaginable $1 billion surplus. And then 2 weeks ago closed 17 schools. And then have a school district announce that they want more than $50 million in budget cuts in a classroom. That's obscene. It's, I talked a little bit about how politicians and elected officials fell apart when a bunch of billionaires demanded to build a Sixer sports arena in the middle of Chinatown. And the people who actually stopped it were ordinary residents and an activated citizenry from all parts of the city, but especially from Black and brown communities that had lost their battles and knew that standing up was exercising that muscle. We won't accept what's happening to you, to me, to others. This is the thing that we're missing right now. We want a beautiful, sparkly, shiny person to go make the world feel better for us. And the reality is that it's our world.
That is what scared them the most about you. And that's why, as you said, how many millions of dollars did they put up against you?
Millions and millions of dollars. Too many millions for us to be able to count. But
did they spend more on you than you spend on yourself?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So, the election was about testing boundaries. When I first came in 2015, I was the first person really elected outside of the mainstream Democratic machine, endorsed by a working families party. They had just gotten started.
Right.
This was the first election where they endorsed a candidate, and that candidate won, not on a working families party ticket, but on a Democratic ticket. And then 4 years later, as is what I knew I would always do. I would endorse my colleague Kendra Brooks to be the first Working Families Party candidate. And Netroots Nation was here in 2019. And since 2019, the two Working Families Party ticket have replaced all the Republicans on the at-large seats on city council, right? Larry Krasner's still here. We've got DSA electeds in our state Senate and our state legislature. Chris Rabb is going to Congress, and
Wait, is Rabb DSA?
Rabb was endorsed by DSA.
Oh, okay,
And I think he's DSA.
Okay.
Could be. And we will have our eye on a certain Senate seat in 2028.
I wonder which Senate seat is that.
Yeah, you don't have to wonder.
Somebody that's quite tall and large.
It's somebody who has left their values behind.
And you would have won if you've left your values behind, young lady.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think like my what I tried to learn about politics and elections, and I've always felt this, is that politics or an election is about the right person meeting that moment.
Exactly.
And it's not always because the wrong person got it, or it was that moment, or the right person always gets it. It's not how it works. And sometimes you have to ask those questions, like, what are our boundaries? What is the capacity of what's possible? And can we go back and do it again? And so I think it felt important. It felt like our schools were on the line, and they are. It felt like, a bunch of billionaires thinking that they can run this city was on the line, and it did. And we keep on. But it's not based on an election. It's about helping people exercise that civic muscle of not normalizing, oppression and scarcity and exploitation and all the things that get us desensitized to what then happens to other people in Palestine.
And that is what very few people understand, right? And that's the reason we're in the condition where, because there's so many people, to bluntly say, are willing to sell their souls. Ultimately, they're willing to sell their souls, and you were not willing to do that. And you were not willing to do that.
Yeah. We were there to show that you can make change. You can make change fast. It doesn't have to be. I know everyone thinks about Trump, but we did it here too. We ended evictions. We were the fourth highest evicting city in the nation. We ended evictions in less than 5 years, or we cut them down so far that it was dramatic. We restored back school funding. We gave nurses and counselors clean water. You can do things quickly, and you can't wait, and you have to take your chances. And sometimes you lose, but it is worth it to know where we stand.
Helen, you've always been, and I say this from the depths of my heart, you've always been an inspiration. I mean, from the time that I met you in Phoenix, just watching you in this, you put progressive into progressive. You really do. And it's not, with you, it's not just words. It is action. And that is what, that can be either, I understand what I'm going to say here. To some extent, it can be depressing. And I mean that in that at the time that you ran, given your record, given not just the activism, but what you wanted to put to the city, corporations versus the people, schools, etc. It's something that would have done the city well. And to think that that message could penetrate, or to think that one could use dollars to erase that message, it's depressing. However, what I got out of our discussion here is that you understand that, and that you said, well, how do you skin a cat in a different manner?
Yeah.
And you went to learn what maybe without affecting your values or impacting your values, what would you try next the next time you do it?
Exactly. And, boo-hoo-hoo for me, but it happens in communities every day.
Yes.
And the thing that I want to think about is that that paralysis, that fear, that depression that kind of sinks in. is like the thing that we also need to overcome, because this dismantling of the horrible things that our country that are being done in our nation's name, or that communities are doing to one another, is obscene and it's harmful, and we have to be able to rise up stronger. And I always think, like, like when things were at their worst with us in like the schools battles, when they closed like 24 public schools in a single 2-hour meeting without a second thought to what would happen to tens of thousands of school children. It was like, you get down on your knees and you weep and you cry, and then you pick yourself back up and you realize that this place is not, they're not for you. So don't derive your power from there, but the power that you gain, there's a new strength that they don't understand. And maybe you're not quite ready yet, but like that strength is going to topple everything. We saw it in Minneapolis. We see it in like young people who took on unimaginable consequences to speak out on Palestine. And it's changed opinion. It can change the world. And that's really where power is. So.
Helen Gym.
Yes.
It is my honor again to be with you, sis.
Thank you.
And,
thank you for allowing us a loving, warm space for different voices to feel embraced and like in community. So, Alberto,
thank you for being a politician, right?
Okay, folks, we have one more that I got to get started right away because we're running up on time. Let's go ahead and do it. AI for the benefit of humanity. AI is incompatible with capitalism. And Jack, when Jack talked about sinister and all that kind of stuff, AI in the hands of the capitalists is in effect sinister. It's in effect a clear and present danger to humanity. Is a definite. It is a definite problem, and that is one of the reasons why I don't ever say I hate AI, because as you guys, I've told you, I've given you my workflow that uses AI. And why does my workflow use AI? Because I'm one person creating a hell of a lot of data, stories, etc. It really, really acts as an assistant. But here's the problem. The problem is, whereas individuals like myself can use AI as a benefit, the capitalist sees the opposite into AI. I want to define capitalism again. If you look at the textbook definition of capitalism, it says the efficient allocation of resources. And that is how, that capitalism is the efficient allocation of resources. And then we go a little bit further to what the god of capitalism has to say, which is the new god, I call him Milton Friedman, died now, but of course he was in the 20th century. And he he makes it clear there is no place in the executive's repertoire, what the executive is tasked to do, where he should take anything into account. Social issues, environmental issues, none of that should be taken into account. Anything that somehow at the present affects the viability of the profits for the shareholders is invalid. I didn't say it. Go to Wikipedia, look up the article he wrote, I think in 1972, where he gave marching orders to executives. So, breaking that down into what AI does for us, AI, and by the way, the fallacy of efficient allocation of resources is just that, a fallacy. if that were true, we wouldn't have multi-payer insurance companies because that's not the efficient allocation of resources. One payer is the efficient allocation of resources. One payer, multiple providers, that's an allocation of resources that enhance competition where the one payer gets the best deal. But when you have multiple payers and multiple providers, that is anarchy. And that is exactly what we get in healthcare. That is not efficiency. Now, going back to the subject at hand that our brother Jack messed with my show with our show, I should say. What the hell am I saying? Our show. Um, so AI in the hands of the capitalist means the following. It means, hey, one of our major costs can go away, the human being. I mean, like I've mentioned before, we went from slavery to mass employment and now to robotics and AI. A lot of folks don't see the correlation, but it's always a master at the top, and that master at the top determine what employment is going to look like, what everything else is going to look like. Why do I call employment as the way we practice it antiseptic slavery? Because again, it is a better form of slavery. And how is that? The slave had to be clothed, the slave had to be fed, the slave had to be kept healthy, the slave was property. Discarding the property meant discarding your wealth. Discarding that slave meant discarding your wealth, your assets. What does a slave do? A slave works. A slave goes into the field and cut cotton. A slave goes ahead and raise the hens. A slave goes ahead and raise the cattle. But doesn't the employee do the same now? Yeah, but difference now is that employee failed. When that employee has failed, or that employee gets sick, or that employee whatever, that employee can be released. That employer has no value to apply to that employee because he can rid himself and go to the pool of potential employees and bring that new one in without losing any of his assets. And why do corporations love or hate rather unions? Corporations hate unions because it makes the employee an asset. I have a friend who did a certain job and he got sick, and because he was represented by an insurance company, he got sick in his mid 50s. He's about 12 years away from retirement, but he will be covered as an asset to that company that he works for. Yes, the the employee became a benign asset when he got, I mean, benign for himself because the union made sure that he had value. A slave was more important to the employer, to the slave owner, than an employee is to the employer today. And when we take away the bells and whistles and understand the financial ramifications of how our current system where employees have no value, how it runs, and when we tie now AI into it, where AI can replace several employees, and not only does it replace an employee, but it devalues those that remain employed in the aggregate. How does it do that? Supply and demand. If you're laying off a lot of employees because there is something that is able to do that job cheaper, that means you're filling up the pool of the unemployed or the pool of the poorly employed. And if you're filling up with the pool of the poorly employed or the underemployed, that means the master, the employer, now can pick and choose at a lower cost that employee. The maximization of efficiency, the efficient allocation of resources, capitalism. Folks, I mean, you're not going to hear it this way on TV. You're not going to hear it this way on the people who are paying the media to indoctrinate us, the people who are paying the teachers to keep us in our place. We don't go to school to learn how to be free. We don't go to school to become business owners and etc. The business owner sits right there in the middle, right? That's why I am for free enterprise. You can own your own business, or you can be a well paid employee who has a stake in the business that you work for. That's what I believe in. Free enterprise. Capitalism is an evil entity, has always been an evil entity. Capitalism is what created slavery. Capitalism is what created the non-union worker, and capitalism is what fights the union worker, the thing that gives the employee a higher status than just being a slave. I mean, this is hard to swallow because when you've been indoctrinated for so long, as I was as well, when you're indoctrinated for so long and you call systems that protect your social well being evil or give it a negative connotation, that is the masterfulness of the innovative, the indoctrinative state. Anyway, Jack, thank you for taking over my first 8 minutes or so of the program, but I think it is something. Thank you for doing that, brother. That is so important. Did
Well,
that make
there's
sense to you
more.
at all, sir?
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's more though.
Go ahead.
What I'm seeing is the wealthy are trying to get rid of labor, period, and shift
Yes,
it over to AI and robotics so they don't need labor anymore. So, I mean,
but
that's the real scary part.
let me tell you, I think that's pretty much what I said when I said that when it did the efficient allocation of resources mean getting rid of the employee because that's a very in their opinion the thing that doesn't compute. But let me tell you something that you just said that is interesting, right? And when I talk about the capitalists or people in that domain aren't necessarily smart, and I don't say that because I want to be um, rude to them or I want to be nasty to them. What I want folks to understand is these guys aren't necessarily very smart because what you don't realize is you remember when you went and learned algebra, you learned what a balance equation was. When you learned chemistry, you learned how to balance the equations when a chemical reaction is going to occur. Balance. Even in accounting, you learn double entry accounting where things have to balance from one side of the from your assets to your liabilities, etc. A equal. Remember that accounting formula for those of you in the house who are accountants. We learned all of those things. Life is a balance. You get water. You drop a piece of water, it turns into a circle because you get gravitational balance, right? What these, and I'll forgive me for calling them this because this is what they are. What these dumb billionaires don't understand is that if you don't get the balance for everything that you create, the billionaire does. You need to have the balance on the other side to buy that which you create. Or I shouldn't say create, they don't create a damn thing. They sell things. For everything that they sell, you have to have somebody on the other end who can afford to buy it. And what they fail to realize is the things that they are doing are cutting the supply of people who would purchase the things that they sell. So eventually, when we talk about capitalism and these things being unsustainable, that's what we're talking about. The whole infrastructure is unsustainable. I play a graph almost every few days on my 3 o'clock program where it shows that as because the billionaires continue to take an unfair share, an undeserved share of growth in the economy, eventually they will own everything. But the piece of the formula that I put in there that is incorrect, that formula is illustrative. But before they own everything, they collapse, they implode. That's just the nature. I mean, that part of the formula I didn't put. I just wanted to show the generality of that they keep getting stronger and owning more, and that eventually they get indentured servitude. But the part of the equation that I didn't put is you need a massive amount of indentured servitude to get the masses down to under 1% for that to occur. So anyway, that's another mathematical feat that I wasn't willing to remember all my
Yeah,
calculus to do. Go ahead.
I think Betty would put it like this:
I
they're
love
cutting
Betty.
off their nose to spite their face.
She has a way of making things very simple, don't she, Jack?
I
I love
try.
Betty. I love Betty. I love you too, but I love Betty, man. All right, and that's a piece that I did this morning. I got to shorten it up when I get some other, when I put the final out there. But we are at the end of the show. I hope you enjoyed that. I didn't get a chance to communicate with you guys as well as I had wanted to communicate with you, but I love you guys, and we'll talk tomorrow. Please uh, consider becoming paid subscribers of our channel by going to politicsandright.com/newsletter. Politicsandright.com/newsletter. Love you all. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right. And you guys know how I end this baby. I am. Wait, let me back up. I can't leave without saluting more of you. Welcome aboard, Chardonnay, Lynette. I don't think I said hello, Mr. K. We also have John Cotter. How you doing, my brother? Great to have you in the house. Michael, Bob, scrolling up. Para ver quién más está aquí that I recognize. Nancy, welcome aboard. Also in my other chat, Eric, Paul, Fleming, Big Mo Prepper. Mo, I mean, you're completely wrong. Okay, but we can discuss that another time. Gene Daigle, how you doing, Gene? Great to have you here. All right, I really have to go now. Thank you so kindly for being here. Love you all. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right, and you guys know how I end this baby. I am what?
Oh.